Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Alan Blake. Our webinar will start in a moment. We're just waiting for everyone to join the meeting. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We will start in just a moment. We're just allowing time for everyone to log into the meeting. Welcome everyone to the PAC webinar, the HolyGrail 2.0 Digital Watermarks Initiative. I'm delighted that you're able to join us today. My name is Alan Blake and I am the PAC Next US and Food Director. I hope that you continue to be safe and well. And again, I'm delighted you're able to be with us and to stay connected with us. And I know that we welcome participants from around the globe. So again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We have some upcoming events, and I'd like to talk about those. So we have a webinar on October the 30th. This is the packaging paradox during COVID. And we have two great speakers, Jean-Pierre Lacroix from SLD and Dr. Sylvain Charlebois from Dalhousie University. So look out for that. You can sign up with that on October the 30th. Now, as part of the webinar, we'd like you to participate with your questions. So please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and then questions will be answered following the presentations. So you can just hover over the box, you'll see the Q&A come up, type in your questions, and again, we'll deal with those at the end. So I'm now delighted to be able to introduce our two speakers today. We have Larry Logan, and Larry is the Chief Evangelist for the Digimark Corporation, and he enjoys more than 30 years success in marketing and creativity, repeatedly developing brands that become industry leaders. Again, he is currently the Chief Evangelist at the Digimark Corporation, the inventor of the imperceptible Digimark barcode identifier for all types of media. In that role, Mr. Logan is leading the company's efforts to create a new standard for the automatic identification of plastics through a form of technology described generically as digital watermarking. And you're going to hear a lot more about this during the presentation. I'd also like to introduce Guian de Belde. Guian is Technical Director and Packaging Technologist at Procter & Gamble. In his 20-plus year career at P&G, Guian has helped drive R&D into sustainable packaging across the company. With experience in upstream technologies, sustainable resins, and EU funding projects. Guian has been involved in developing key partnerships across the value chain and managing open innovation through P&G's Connect and Develop program. And of course, most recently, Guian has been leading this 3-year pioneering project, HolyGrail, on the standardization of markers, watermarks in packaging to increase efficiencies and high quality sorting and to strive for higher recycling rates as part of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's New Plastics economy initiative. And again, you're going to hear lots more about this during the presentation. So with that said, I'd now like to invite our speakers to come in and share what's going to be a really exciting presentation for all.
Thank you very much, Alan, for the introduction. So indeed, we're going to talk about the HolyGrail 2.0 initiative, which is an initiative all around revolutionizing sorting and recycling by means of intelligent packaging enabled by digital watermarks. So we're going to give this presentation in 3 sections. I will take care of the first section, give you a little bit of history. Later on, we will move to Larry, which will explain digital watermarks in much greater detail. And I will finish off with the current and the future outlook on this project. Good, so let's move to the next slide, please. The next slide is really all about where does it fit into a circular economy, right? So this is the famous 5-pillar slide, as I call it. What needs to be true to make packaging work into a circular economy? So on the left-hand side, you see the first pillar, which is all about designing for recycling and circularity. That's really our job as brand owners and retailers to ensure that we are designing the packages such that they can enter back into the value chains, into a circular economy. Second one is obviously then linked to access to collection. Again, in Europe, there are quite some different collection schemes in place, so there is a need for harmonization. I think in North America, obviously, there is a need also to have much more collection systems in place, and definitely in some parts of the world there is nothing, right? So infrastructure is definitely one of the key pillars here as well. The third one is then all about educating the consumers, so motivating them to do the right thing at the end of the life of a package. And that's basically also where things like how to recycle labels can help consumers in making the right decisions. A fourth pillar is all about the innovation in separation technologies, and that's basically where HolyGrail all got started. And that's also something that we will address in more detail during this presentation. But if you have all of these 4 pillars in place, we really can talk about high quality and high quantities of recycled materials, for which we still need to find end markets. And a good end market is obviously to put it back into packaging, which is nicely fitting into P&G sustainability goals. And that's really important, right? Because if there's no end market, then obviously you never will end up into circular economies of packaging. In a nutshell, the big bottlenecks, the 2 big bottlenecks today is really on the collection, linked to collection schemes and participation of consumers, but also very importantly, also sorting, right? So if we can crack those 2 bottlenecks, then we really can talk and increase recycling rates in general. Moving to the next slide, and I'm not sure if the slides are still visible for people. At least they disappeared on my screen.
Technical glitch, I'm sorry, I'm fixing that.
No problem.
Now.
Sure, no problem. Thank you, Lindsay. Okay, so I was talking indeed about the sorting challenge. And sorting also has been highlighted by many stakeholders as being a key outage today. If you move to the next slide, you see it. It was a kind of a public poll during one of the Plastic Recyclers Europe events, where at the times when we still could travel. And the question asked to an audience of around 300 people was like, what impacts the recyclability of a package? And obviously, as you can see, sorting was highlighted as number 1. Let me give you some background on Project HolyGrail. If we move to the next slide, please. HolyGrail was established under the New Plastics Economy from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. About 4 years ago, I have been pitching the idea to start investigating intelligent packaging for better sorting. that idea moved into what they call a pioneering project, which is basically collaborative projects with the partners you can see there on the bottom of the slide. And the key question we wanted to address at that moment in time is like, should the industry looking into using more chemical tracers, which are typically fluorescent items you would add to a package that gives you a specific signal under light conditions, or should the industry look into digital watermarks? I can tell you back in 2015, nobody ever heard about digital watermarks, especially not people in the recycling industry. So we have been working this one for 3 years within the new plastics economy. And one of the key conclusions coming out of there was really that there is much more value in digital watermarks than traces. And a lot of the stakeholders in the project really wanted to focus efforts really on digital watermarks and really how to bring it to life. So that was one of the reasons, and you will hear it later, that we will continue looking into digital watermarks with project HolyGrail 2.0. And we are only focusing actually on digital watermarks simply because it gives you much more value. Now I talked a little bit about, or I talked a lot about digital watermarks. What is it? What is it, right? So that's really the next slide in a nutshell, because Larry will talk a little bit more in details. If we move to the next slide, please. Yep, so you can see it here. So Alan also was referring to imperceptible codes. So this is one way to integrate digital watermarks by means of artwork. So what we are doing is basically a Photoshop manipulation of artwork, in this case, the shrink sleeve, where you basically would use existing ink. So the white ink in the middle, for example, you're gonna use to make very small dots in the right-hand corner in the blue area, and vice versa. We would use the blue ink from the right-hand corner and put small blue dots in the middle, the white area. By that way, we're actually creating imperceptible codes, which are hardly visible to the consumer. But if I would start scanning that package with an easy, cheap cameras, such as the one on my iPhone, it actually would be detected as a multitude of codes. So that's really, in essence, what it's all about. It's purely a modification, Photoshop manipulation of your artwork. We are using existing inks, we're using existing printing processes whatsoever. The picture here on the Lenore beads is actually a commercial item as of last week. So we have been shipping this now into the German market. And we were very excited that indeed the first bottles were hitting the market about a week ago. So it's relatively fresh from the press, let's call it like that. Now, integration into artwork is one way to do it. We also can implement it directly in molds. That's really the next slide, if you want to click one further. If we start embossing molds, basically, every time you produce an article, like in this case, again, the Unstoppable bottle, the digital watermarks are there embedded into the bottle structure itself. So if we do it this way, then obviously it's a little bit more visible towards the consumers, because we always need to create a kind of a contrast. Now, this is just one way. We have been piloting this one on PET bottles, as you can see here, on HDP bottles, but also on trays. And that's basically, if you click further, you will see that there has been quite some work happened in the space of trays with collaboration between Digimarc and Paco. And they have been running a lot of trials on all kinds of trays. What you see here now is PET trays, but also they have been running it on polypropylene trays and other packaging items. But as you can see here, you basically can start programming more information, such as if that package has been used for food content, or CO2 equivalents, or PCR contents whatsoever, right? So the technology is more than just sorting, or offering more than just sorting benefits. It also will come, or can come, with additional consumer benefits, right? Because my packaging article just became a kind of an Internet of Things, and I can easily communicate with consumers for quite a lot of things, to be honest, right? So ingredient transparency, but also packaging transparency, and even instructions in a digital way, like how to recycle this package. So moving on, I think my last slide is really another example of a development by Pacor. So here you see a polypropylene tub, and again, it was successfully implemented on these type of polypropylene trays. So let's go a little bit further into the details. Now I'm just going to hand it over to Larry, which is going to give you a little bit more information about signals and so forth. So Larry, up to you.
Great, Ian. Thank you so much for that overview. And what I'm going to discuss with you now and share with you is Digimark barcode. And we work in a field that's generically called digital watermarking, but Digimark barcode is the result of more than 25 years of R&D and success in terms of global deployments in a variety of different industries. In terms of what is a Digimark barcode, it consists of two key components. What you see on the left is a message signal, and this is structured data. It could be the product code, the SKU, internal tracking data, or other GS1 attributes. We combine that with a synchronization signal, and this lets us understand the relationship between the viewing device, the camera, the computer, and the object itself that carries the code. So we understand distance, skew, and rotation. We combine those together. Lindsay, if you'll advance, please. We combine those into what we refer to as a signal tile. And you see, it's pretty small here, really about the size of a postage stamp. And what we're going to do is take that signal tile and then replicate it throughout the media, whether that's in print or in the case of plastics in 3 dimensions. Lindsay, next slide, please. So utilizing, and go ahead, and I realize now we have these in sort of animations, but utilizing common Adobe software tools, Photoshop and Illustrator, that signal tile is going to be replicated throughout the artwork. Now, that's done by slightly modulating the pixels that make up the design. That's it. And it utilizes contrast and color, but in a way that's low in terms of perceptibility by humans. In essence, it's designed to understand what are the weaknesses in the human visual system. Now, it uses the existing pixels. There's no special inks and there's no special printing process. And a unique characteristic, which is especially important in terms of recycling, is that where you see the code blocks here, that we don't even need a single tile in order to do a detection. So it's possible in the upper left hand, in the case of this Unstoppables bottle, that we can take a portion of the tile in the artwork, we can combine that with a portion of a tile in the lower right, and then in essence to be able to make a determination and a signal based upon that. And when you think about the compression, folding, dirt, and all of those things that happen in recycling, it's this kind of robustness and error correction that we built into Digimark barcode. Lindsay? So as he had mentioned, we do the same thing in terms of applications in plastic. If you would, one more click there, Lindsay. So we do this in a process that we refer to as micro topological variations. So we are creating this very slight change in the substrate itself. What you see on the right is really an earlier version done by one of our licensees, a bit more dramatic than what we currently do now. But it creates, in essence, an embossing effect. And we're getting some excellent feedback from brands. One, the question, will I still be able to see the contents inside? And yes, consumers can still see the contents. But also it's a way that through a haptic means, by touching the package, consumers might start to learn about the recyclability. So that's a good thing. And in addition to Pacor, we're working with other leading mold and converting companies in a wide variety of molds and molding processes. Next, please. So what this really means now in terms of recycling is that current methodology utilizes near infrared detection, which might be based on color or spectral analysis. It attempts to make a determination of the piece of plastic or the artwork that comes through based upon those characteristics. We invert that model where we put the intelligence into the package and then the package informs the system what it is. So it's far more precise, far more accurate. Really, it's an absolute identifier. And then in that way, because of all the robust information and attributes that are tied to the item, then the operator in the facility can sort based upon what filter, what attributes they want to sort on. So it could be a positive sort, a negative sort, divide into different waste streams. That's all under the control of the operator, again, based upon the very rich attributes that are tied to this. And next, please, Lindsay. Yeah, that's just kind of a little animation there. So one of the things that we say, if we really take a step back though, what Digimarc Barcode is really part of a platform. And it's the idea that by creating intelligence into these objects, that there's opportunities for value extraction throughout the entire package journey. In manufacturing, it might be parts matching. In distribution, it could be counterfeit deterrence, gray market, track and trace, farm to home. In the case of retail, in aisle, retail operations and inventory, checkout, everything goes faster because consumers and the cashier are not trying to twist the package, trying to find a single visual symbology where we might have, let's say on a box of cereal, 300 replicated codes. At home, the consumer can point at the package and based on geolocation, get different information than was used in the store to make a buy determination. And then in recycling, and that's the new exciting area. So what we're really talking about here is the opportunity from birth to rebirth to extract value out of the package. Next slide, please. So Ian, is this one still mine? Back to yours.
Yeah, you just can continue. No worry.
Yes, so very much of the focus on HolyGrail and a lot of the attention and press has been on the sorting technology side. But as he had pointed out at the beginning, it's without driving collections, industry will simply not be able to meet the regulations and the pledges in order to utilize more and more PCR content. So that same code now creates an opportunity for consumers to engage with the package and to be able to receive information about how to recycle. That can be also based on geolocation, such that you and I might live on different sides of the street. We have different curbside waste providers, but actually we get different instructions based upon the facility and the waste streams that they have. It's also an opportunity though for brands now to use the code for brand activation, to engage with consumers. In the case on the right, this was a package that's been used very widely for demonstrations where in essence through augmented reality, the cow here talks to the consumer and says, make sure you recycle. And as you turn that package, then on the lower right, or you start to see the cucumbers, it actually goes to recipes and other information. On the lower left, again, it's the way to point at the package and based upon the country or the municipality, there's instructions in terms of how to dispose of that package. Next, please.
Don't forget, the in-mold label cup is fully recyclable. So please recycle this pack. Be good for nature. See you soon.
Terrific. So next slide, please. So this again, a few slides from Pacor, but an interesting aspect here where the consumer, you see a consumer phone and you see this very rich information. An interesting aspect of the technology is that there's one code, but there can be a different response based upon the application and the device. So in this case, you see all the information that actually might be very important to a recycler in terms of the material and the content that can be available to consumers, but also depending upon the application, the device, by them pointing at the tub in this particular case, it might have the augmented reality information that I showed you on the previous slide. Go ahead, Lindsay. Yeah, so Ian, back to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Larry. So indeed, we also got some very nice prime time on the BBC News. I'm not going to show the movie here, but it was really a good capture of what the technology is able to do. And if people do have an interest, you obviously find the link here below the slide. Now, during the project and as a kind of the closeout on the new HolyGrail 1.0, we have been organizing a couple of open houses at the Tomra machine vendor. And I think in total around 200 people have been looking into that machine up and running. And we also actually prepared a quick movie to demonstrate it also in this audience. So let's have a look to that movie so you can see the machine up and running. So Lindsay, if you just can click one more.
So today I'm very excited to organize a second open house here at the Tomra headquarters in Germany. We actually had 144 people subscribed for this second open day, where we have been explaining a little bit more about HolyGrail 2.0, which is our new project solely focusing on the use of digital watermarks to make packaging more intelligent and use that intelligence across the full life cycle of a package.
The event kicked off with presentations by Tom Eng, Senior Vice President and Head of Tomra Recycling, Nico van der Wal, Product and Circularity Economy Manager of Verstrata IML, and Larry Logan, Chief Evangelist of Digimark Corporation. There were 49 total products that were enhanced with Digimark barcode and delivered by brands for the demonstration, including a wide variety of formats for both print and plastics packaging, as you see in the left column. The photos show a representative sampling from this list, but not all of the packages are shown here. To detect the enhanced packages, a new configuration for detection was utilized using a newer version of Digimark software. The cameras capture frames of the packages, which go to Digimark detectors to analyze both printed pieces and plastic substrates. Using a database of attributes about the package, the system determines which packages to positively or negatively sort and generate data and analytics. And here we see the combined components brought together into what initially will be a bolt-on module for existing sorting equipment installations. And now let's look at the setup for the demonstration itself. The operator can choose to sort based on attributes. Here we only see coded plastic substrates separated out on the right. Products can be detected and sorted based on any attribute, such as food versus non-food usage, recyclable versus compostable, and detect black and opaque plastics. Here is what the camera sees at 10% of normal speed. Each small dot represents a Digimark detection point. And here is the conveyor running at 20% normal speed. Highly specular and crushed packages can still be detected, combining codes from different areas of the package. The participants were divided into two groups to allow easier access to view the various stages of the sortation process, and later adjourned for question and answer sessions.
We see that there is a future demand of the industry, for instance, to supply material that's also possible to be implemented in food packaging. Today's technology cannot solve this problem. So we believe that digital watermark can give the added value, the additional information that will help us to also sort in the food and non-food quality in the future. As a worldwide leading supplier of sensor-based sorting equipment, we are excited to develop this new technology and to bring this to our clients and the industry.
Perfect. Good. So let's move to the next. So I think so far you have seen indeed all the progress we have been made under HolyGrail 1.0. Let's now have a quick look to what we are currently working and what's really the future all about. So as I was mentioning, we're gonna put this new initiative, which will focus purely on digital watermarks now, under AIM, which is the European Brands Association. And the objective of this new initiative is really to prove the viability of digital watermark technologies for accurate sorting and the business case at a larger scale. Let's move on to the next slide, which is again a very quick movie on the value of such sorting technologies for European targets, but I think you also can link it with any kind of US-backed targets or whatsoever. So let's have a very quick look at this short movie. Okay, let's move to the next one. So I'm just going to go very fast on these topics because obviously it's more related to Europe. I think it's important for this audience to understand that in Europe we indeed have a kind of a European Green Deal, and one of the pillars is all about transitioning faster to a circular economy. You see here a couple of targets, not easy to achieve, and definitely there is a need to innovate in the space of both sorting and recycling, and we believe that indeed HolyGrail can contribute to these aspects. Moving on to next one. Yep, I think you can do one further click. There is indeed already reference in some of the very important documents from the European Commission, mainly the essential requirements, but also the Circular Economy Action Plan is already referring to the value of digital watermarks. Which we believe is a really good thing because one day even we can make it part of the essential requirements, which is basically mandatory requirements to put items onto the European market. And I think that would be the greatest achievement we can imagine, so that all of the brand owners and retailers have to put these digital watermarks into their packages by law. Moving to the next one. Again, I think we can skip this one. I've given you the background, so let's further click a little bit. I'm just gonna try to skip a couple of items in the interest of time. Yeah, click to the next one. And the next one, apologize for that one. So currently, as you could see from the video, we currently have 90 plus members. Here are a couple of names, not all of the 90 are in here. but the most up-to-date list also can be found back on the website. And in the last slide, I will make reference to that website. But you can see here clearly, it's a true representation of a full value chain, right? So we have a resin producer, we have converters, we have machine builders. Both Tomra and Pelang, globally the biggest ones active in this field, are represented in here. We have loads and loads of brand owners. We have retailers sitting here in as well, and then obviously we have representatives also from the waste industry. So I think by working through all of these partners, we hope that we can truly bring a difference and further develop the technology at an industrial scale. So let's have a look into the roadmap of what we actually want to do. It's the next slide. The first thing, so the official launch date of HolyGrail 2.0 was September the 8th. And pretty fast in the process, we got these representation already from 90 plus members, which was great. And the first thing we would like to do is to build a new prototype based on the latest specifications coming out of Digimark. So that's really foreseen to build that first unit towards the beginning of 2021. Then we would like to ship that unit into what we call a semi-industrial testing, where we basically would like to investigate the impact of dirt, the impact of aging, the impact of crushing, basically replicating a real industrial sorting plant in what we call the semi-industrial testing. So what it means is that all of the brand owners and the retailers that have signed up for this project would send some enhanced packages into a semi-industrial environment site, which already has been located. And we're going to run all of those testing in that specific site on real life equipment. Whenever that step, very important step is done, we can then really start to think about scaling it up into national test market or national test markets. For the time being, we are assuming to run into 3 different test locations by just easily moving the add-on module from one location to another one, right? I think I've seen some questions also in the Q&A. But how we want to implement is the fact that we really want to have add-on modules onto existing sorters, which obviously will limit the capital investments. So we are just going to bolt on an add-on module made out of cameras, high-speed cameras, and powerful LED lights. And we're just going to link it with existing near-infrared sorters. So that's really the plan. And then we easily can move that add-on module from one location to another. We do plan to test in, for example, MRFs, material recovery facilities, and or even at recyclers. Has not been decided yet, but both of these options can be evaluated. Last, or one of the next slides, is talking more about the focus areas. So obviously, we're going to focus a lot on intelligent sorting. That was just the roadmap you have been seeing in the previous slide. But also, there will be a big focus on data mining, right? So we need to create a kind of a database that is then accessible to the waste manufacturers, both the MRFs and recyclers, or whoever needs it. And they then basically have a much better tool to start sorting the waste in the fractions they want, right? So the idea here is it's going to be a cloud-based system, potentially with GS1, which also has some good track records on managing standard barcodes. And the idea would be that the waste industry can download the latest versions onto their machines and then can decide themselves how to sort the waste. So we are providing them with the tools, and then obviously in their operation, they, for example, can decide to make food grade versus non-food grade whatsoever. This is very important because it goes back to the first point on the intelligent sorting, right? So on that one, you also can think about 3 key focus area: rejection of certain things, right? So things you don't want to have in your streams in a sorting centers. Think about compostables. Think about items like do-it-yourself items with silicones. These things do not belong in a sorting center, and maybe you want to negatively sort them out. So that's really the first part there on rejection. Another one would be to add more streams, right? So there's quite a lot of conversion from multi-layer materials into monomaterials. The question is always like, how can I effectively sort it? Think about pouches. There's quite a lot of conversion into monopolyethylene, but a standard near-infrared sorter cannot make a differentiation between a pouch which is a laminate versus one which is typically safe to be sent to a polyethylene stream. And then the last part there is defining streams. We have been talking about food and non-food grades, but also think about opening it up to more streams than just food and non-food. Think about detergent grades, PCR, think about cosmetic grades, PCR, and so forth and so forth. And then a last focus area is definitely on the consumer engagement. Moving on, again, we have a full structure in place within AIM. We have a charter. Everyone can have a look into onto the website. The charter is there. There are technical working groups established. In fact, Larry just came out of providing a training in 3 master classes. And we have also a full leadership team in place. Again, all of the information is on the site. So I'm just gonna move on to the next slide, please. There is a secretariat for the daily support, but also very important, we have been hiring a technical project manager, Anne Vossen, which has a lot of relevant industry experience in waste and waste manufacturing. So she's acting now as a consultant to the group, and she's doing a very good job. Last but not least, we also have legal counsel, which is very important into these type of cross-value chain collaborations, because obviously there's quite a lot of competing companies trying to work together. To end, I just wanted to provide you with a quote from Michelle Gibbons, which is the DG for AIM. I think the nice thing about digital watermarks is that you really are combining 3 key ingredients: innovation, sustainability, and digital. And this is really nicely linked towards the European Green Deal. So I think with that, let's move to the next slides. This is the end of the presentation. I was referring indeed to the website where you can find much more information for those people that want to read a little bit more about it. But I suggest we open the floor for questions. Thank you.
Larry, Gian, thank you very much indeed. Let me just remind everyone to hover over the top or the bottom of your screen to find the Q&A, and you can type your questions in there, and we have lots of questions. So we're going to do our utmost to answer them, and we'll get going with these. So here you go. Larry, Gian, you ready for this lot? And they're great questions, great questions. So here's the first one. How can digital watermarks be incorporated into natural unprinted films? So they're thinking of cast films, blown films, extrusion coated films, and then what would be required to manage the Digimark during printing?
Yeah, a couple of things there. If it's not printed at all, then there's nothing there to create contrast. Is it possible then to emboss, a fine film? It's something that we're being asked about, and there's some early exploration of that. But part of that really has to go to the structural strength of the film itself. What I mean by that is if you think about compaction and crushing later, or how it's even handled, then there's the chance very much that just those impressions might be in essence debossed, such that they no longer have any sort of physical structure that would be detected. So I think that's certainly going to be a challenge in those films, but certainly there's some interest in some explorations that will be going on.
Yeah, maybe just to build on that one, right? So I think indeed we need to make a differentiation between cast and blown film. I think on cast film, You can think about embossing the calendaring rolls. So that should be an option. For the blown film, indeed, that's going to be somewhat more difficult. Now, what you typically could do is to implement small black dots into a film, and yes, that means printing it. I'm aware of that one. But I'm always amazed if I'm getting a business cards from Digimark, right? So they're white business cards. With my consumer eye, I can't see a difference, but if I use my phone, I actually can scan it, right? And the way they do it is indeed they print small dots. I don't know the color, Larry, you need to help me, but it could be a small black dots, and that gives you the code. So I think for blown film, if there is a need, that could be one of the options.
Okay, guys, thank you. That was very detailed, and I'm sure we can have some follow-up. We'll provide contact details for Larry and Gyan, so if you want follow-up, you can do that after the webinar. This next question is around level of acceptance by consumer goods companies and incorporating Digimark into their packaging. So what do you think is needed before recyclers will invest in sorting capability for Digimark?
Ian, do you want to start?
Yeah, so I think, let me first tackle the point from the acceptance from brand owners and retailers, and then Larry, you can continue maybe on the investments and so forth, right? But I think from a branding point of view, obviously the fact that these codes are imperceptible is a good thing. I think maybe up till 5 years ago, it was much more visible versus where we are standing today. And if you would be able to have a look into one of the packaging items that we as brand owners are now putting into the marketplace, I think it's hardly noticeable for consumers, right? I mean, the Lenore sleeved one has been going through a very thorough process with our designers and marketeers, and it was accepted. We also see other companies that are doing similar efforts, other brand owners in the group that also are launching as we speak. So I think more and more there is some general acceptance on the concept, simply also because the imperceptible codes have become more imperceptible.
Yeah, I might point out on the recyclers, I think one of the great values of the initiative is that it does include Veolia and Suez and others, facility operators, plastics recyclers, Europe, and others. So I think very much those business models will be sort of resolved over time as we do the testing. I think in addition, though, cost would certainly always be a key determinant. But there's also other, I'll refer to it as regulatory pressures. So there's a document right now in terms of the European Commission that it's very much a focus on facility operators and their ability to create greater efficiency and to be able to report that efficiency. And digital watermarking is being seen as one way for them to be compliant with those requirements in terms of greater measurement and greater sortation.
It's indeed a good point. And I think, one of the items we didn't talk was the fact that the technology allows you to have much more data granularity, right? So that the EU Commission is even looking into how can I define if a package is recyclable or not, right? Today you can't, you have a couple of guidelines, but you don't have actual percentage numbers. If you're now going to start calculating those numbers, according to new regulations at the end of a sorting center or at the beginning of a recycler, you pretty much can do it even on a product level, right? And that really gives quite a lot of value. The other item next to governments, which all have very ambitious targets, is obviously the value of EPR schemes, right? And it's pretty good to have EXPRA, which is a kind of European alliance of quite a lot of EPR schemes sitting in this initiative and also sitting in the leadership team, because obviously they're also looking into innovation in the field, simply because they also need to meet the targets. Now, as I was saying in the beginning, the objective of HolyGrail 2.0 is also to prove technicalities of the project, of the technology, sorry, digital watermark technology, but really also the business case at a larger scale. And that's also where quite a lot of the waste manufacturers, and Larry mentioned indeed Suez and the Veolas of this world, will take part in as well, right? So that's, I think, an hopefully a not too detailed answer to the question.
That's great, very helpful. Here's another interesting one. What happens with a bottle that has a sleeve on it, and potentially you have 2 watermarks on that package? How would a sorter deal with that?
Yes, so it's the same concept, whether it's in print or on the plastic bottle. However, what we refer to as a grid structure, in essence, how that code is communicated or structured is different in print versus in plastics. And we do that so that there's not confusion in other applications such as front of store checkout, where we don't want the plastic necessarily to overreading what's there in terms of print and create any kind of conflict. So what happens is that the shrink film has its code. The underlying plastic has virtually the same code, but in a way that is read differently in a recycling facility, or for example, in front of store checkout. So the shrink sleeve says, what am I? What am I made of as a material? But also it can say, what am I wrapped around? What is the material that's underneath me? And so therefore, where shrink film today might mask the plastic where it can't be read by NIR, this is a way in terms of sending it to the right waste stream based upon understanding what are both of the components in terms of the shrink sleeve and the plastic.
So you've just defined smart packaging there, Larry, I think.
Hopefully so. Thank you.
Here's a great question. What's required for a design firm to begin incorporating the digital watermarks into packaging design?
Well, Alan, if I may, I think we skipped one, and I think it's an important one in terms of the cost to retrofit.
I was going to catch that one later, Larry.
Oh, okay. So I'll jump to technologies. If you're a design firm or a pre-media company, you already have the tools and you're using them every day. And that's Illustrator and Photoshop. We're also integrated into ESCO and other processes for trapping and quality control and things like that. A key thing, though, is we provide the tools. I mean, we're technologists, but we don't get in the way. And what I mean by that is that a brand continues to use their existing pre-media suppliers or design firms. They don't have to come to Digimarc per se. They do initially just to set up an account, in essence, to get access to a barcode. But that account can be handed off to their suppliers who actually can enhance packaging, utilize the Digimarc barcode. So we never want to be a constraint or a bottleneck. We want brands to continue with their current workflow and their current operations as they do today.
Great, fantastic. So let's just touch on this. You've talked about how you're looking to scale up here with the pilot, and then you're going to run real life trials with dirt, looking at time, crushing, contamination, and all of this. And you're going to come out with a conclusion that this combination of high-speed cameras and LED lighting is going to work. How do you imagine you're going to scale this? And this just then obviously goes into the cost. How would we imagine scaling this in North America and looking at the hundreds, thousands of MRFs that we have? What is the thinking behind how we will just manage what clearly in terms of capital is going to be a significant sum, but individually might be, very doable. So what is your thinking around this scalability and cost?
Well, I think there are two parts to it, and Ian can certainly address really under HolyGrail and the global scaling, but I do want to make a distinction here, based upon Chris's question. And that is that in order to lower the barrier for facility operators to get started, is that the concept and what we've demonstrated today is what we're referring to as a bolt-on module. So this is a module that can sit in front of NIR, but work in parallel with NIR. And it's a quicker, lower cost way for a facility operator to get started without having to pull out in essence, or retrofit their complete existing systems. Now, over time, and we're working with Pelink and Tomra, there'll certainly be others, but over time, then there'll be more of a full integration of Digimarc into their larger shipping units. But this is a way at a lower cost. What that cost is, we're still working with the equipment manufacturers to look at that cost based upon scale and processing power. The great thing is that every year those costs keep lowering, but at some point we'll have more guidance on that. And then Ian, in terms of, over to you.
No, I think, I mean, the idea really is to do the full upscaling process out of Europe. We indeed mentioned Pelink, Tomra. I mean, they're both based in Europe, so it makes sense to do it here, but obviously also driven by the European Green Deal and all of the sensitivities on plastic strategies, which is a pretty hot topic in Europe, right? So we first would do it here according to the roadmap, and that machine that we would like to test in the industrial facilities can be considered as the first commercial add-on unit. We indeed then would envision that the technology would travel towards other regions, including North America, Canada. And I think what we want to do is to find a very similar setup as the one we are having here in within AIM, and also then evaluate the value for recyclers, because at the end of the day, I mean, if you look into the world of recycling, there is mechanical recycling, there is dissolution recycling, there is chemical recycling, gasification, pyrolysis, and many more things. But guess what? All of these different processes, they all do need to have very good feedstock, right? Through a sorting process to make them economically viable. So we see a lot of value for any kind of recycling process, but really it's all about upgrading the PCR quality, and hence a recycler and the respective waste manufacturer eventually can sell their PCR at the right market price, right? So today, if you look to film recycling, that typically ends up in a lower end application. In the future, there will be PCR grades available for film, which then those recyclers can again sell at a higher pricing, right? So it's all about economics, and the calculations have to be made really on a local level, and see where the recyclers and the waste industry in general can get the benefits from.
Thanks. So, gentlemen, I'm going to ask a favor. If you are able to hang with us an extra 5 minutes, and we'll answer as many questions as we can. But let me just talk to our participants at the moment. I understand that on the hour, many people go to their next meetings. So please, everyone is going to receive a recording of the webinar, and you'll get the slides and the key takeaways. So please note that will be sent to you, and keep following PAC on www.pac.ca for our upcoming webinars. But for those of you who would like to hang on for an extra 5 minutes, I'm going to ask Larry and Gian to answer a few more of the questions that have come in. So is that okay with you, Larry and Gian, for an extra 5 minutes just to answer some of the other questions?
Of course, thank you.
And to our participants, it's absolutely fine if you need to leave. As I said, you'll get a recording. But for those of you who can hang on, I'm going to ask some more of these questions. So here we go. Does the consumer engagement augmented reality experience require a native mobile app to be downloaded? Hopefully you understand what that's asking, yes. Larry or Gian.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, at this point, that app does require a Digimarc software development kit to read that. And we're in Walmart's app and other apps. And the process to do that only takes a matter of hours and a little bit of quality control, but it's very straightforward. It doesn't impede what the current design is of that app. It simply integrates into it. A great example last year was Walmart and their Christmas catalog, where consumers could point to images and then have that pulled up into an ordering form. Certainly, we will work to hopefully be integrated to be native to both iOS and Android. There's a great deal of industry support behind that. But of course, those are business decisions by those respective companies. But we certainly appreciate the value and the ease that that'll provide to consumers. Also, in the case of recycling, it's very likely that much of those experience would be done from their, let's say, country or their curbside provider. So in the case of CTO in France, might well have an app, Clarabelle in Belgium, the various green dots, where it's really much more tailored to provide other information, other value in terms of their account, other instructions, other guidance. And it's very simple for us to get integrated into any of those.
Okay, thank you. So as a kind of an extension of this question is, can you combine an EAN barcode and a QR and augmented reality in only one Digimarc code?
Yes and no. So part of the question goes to what is the length of the data that it would hold. And we very purposefully, and this goes back 25 years ago and has been proven over and over again in terms of our global deployments. The most efficient way to do this, and a way that does the least amount of disruption to the artwork or the video or the audio, is to utilize a very small code that points to the cloud where there's virtually unlimited data. And the beauty of that is that that data can always be updated. So currently a QR code would point, let's say, to a specific URL. It's hardwired, but if that changes, then you sort of have to keep jumping to different URLs. Our particular case, it always points to what is the most current and common information. However, another interesting aspect is that we can serve functionally the same thing as a QR code, UPC, EAN, data matrix code in this way. And that goes back to, I probably mentioned earlier, that based upon the context and the device, that there's a different response. So let's say the code is 123. To a front of store checkout, 123 might be $4. 123 to a consumer with a smartphone takes them to a totally different brand experience. To inspection systems, 123 says that's the wrong label that's coming together on that shampoo bottle, that particular case. So actually it's a far more, by using that platform approach, it actually gives you the flexibility in essence to accomplish in one code what all these separate codes do now, which simply, take up packaging, real estate, and removing opportunities for marketing to make use of that space.
Thank you, Larry. Here's one related to compostable and non-compostable packaging. So could Digimarc be used to reduce contamination caused by non-compostable packaging at organics processing facilities? Because this is often a common issue, that you can't tell the difference between compostable and non-compostable, and therefore you get contamination challenges.
Correct, and I think indeed, it's a very good question. We see a lot of items that are labeled as being industrially compostable or home compost or whatever it is, but eventually never will make it into a composting site, right? If we're going to label these packaging items to the target stream, being it a compost site, industrial composting site, or recycling site, it's indeed true that we, at the start or at the entry of your compost site, you can basically kick out all of the items that should not belong into your streams, right? So I think I mentioned the opposite. In a sorting site, you can kick out all of your compostable items and send them for industrial composting. But obviously, yes, also vice versa. In your industrial composting site, you also can kick out the standard plastics, which never will make it into composting. So the answer is yes, if you're going to use negative sorting.
Okay. There's been several questions around tracking and tracing, and being able to track and trace a package and whether it has recycled content, and confirm that it's actually been recycled. Is that a reality with the attributes in the package and reading of it, that we could confirm that we've tracked it, traced it, and it's been recycled?
The front end part would be yes, by putting a code there and by the manufacturer ascribing certain attributes, then those attributes are available, again, for different processes and machines and computing, et cetera, as it goes through that package journey. As it goes through the sorting process and through the other end of the facility, that code's going to be lost. So it just sort of shows, in essence, as robust it is, it will be, once it's broken down to flakes, it will be lost. Now, what some brands are doing already is that part of in their mold or in the attributes they're ascribing, they are saying what is the PCR content that is already in that particular package. So that's one way that they're communicating it there. And I'll always defer to Ian as the expert on
No, and I think
all things packaging.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. So I think we need to make a differentiation on the question if you want to track PCR or if you want to track recyclability, right? As Larry was indeed mentioning, once the package went through a kind of a grinding operation at the recycler, the code is gone, which indeed is a very good thing because we are not risking of cross-contamination later on. So in terms of determine the recyclability effective percentage rates, yes, it can be done simply by just counting the amount of products one MRF would convert in a month or whatever the number is going to be, right? So that can be done. In terms of tracking PCR, that's more difficult, and I'm also not sure if that's going to be required. I mean, there's quite a lot of efforts going on with the APR, but also with Plastic Recyclers Europe in terms of chain of custody. So I'm actually not convinced you really need to put something in the resin really to have a good track and trace system. So a chain of custody would be probably the way out as well.
Thank you. All right, I think we ought to wrap up here and ask the two of you, gentlemen, if you'd like to leave some final thoughts and comments with the audience. So let's go to you first, Larry, for final thoughts and messages you'd like to give to the attendees.
Well, Alan, thank you again, and to your members for the opportunity to join you today. And hopefully this presentation's been informative and the activity that's going on in the US, in Europe, I'm sorry. But actually what we are also looking forward to is, how do we really get going over here in North America? And one of the things that we'll be looking forward to is the support and sponsorships, of organizations such as yours and APR, facilities. And so we're really kind of looking at similar to what we've done in Europe, but looking for those opportunities here in the US. So we welcome that kind of support. Please reach out. You can reach me at Digimarc Corporation. I'm sure Lindsay will provide the email later. And again, thank you again for the opportunity to join you today.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Larry. Gian?
Yeah, I think I only can echo that one, right? I mean, yes, quite some active work going on in Europe. I think it's really the time to look into how can we bring it to North America and under which kind of structure, right? I think we can learn a lot from what we have been doing with AIM. There's obviously a kind of an equivalent association in the US. And it's really then all about bringing the full value chain together, including certain associations, such as indeed PAC, but also APR and some others, recruiting members, and then indeed implementing it, right? So I think, again, I wanted to thank also you, Alan, and Lindsay, and the rest of the PAC team to give us the time to explain HolyGrail. And I hope with this, people understand the value. And I think I want to rephrase once more the fact that it gives you value across the full life cycle of a package. It's more than just sorting, right? Because that's something we are hearing. Indeed, it all started with sorting. But if you really look to the value of a watermark, is the fact that you create value across the full life cycle of a pack. And I think with that, I would like to finish the talk.
Fantastic. Larry, Gian, just a great presentation. I'd like to thank all of our participants for hanging in there. Again, we will provide a recording with the slides and key takeaways. And there were several questions that we were not able to answer. I will forward them to Gian and Larry, and we'll hopefully share that as part of the key takeaways. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe, stay well, and look out for the next PAC webinar. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.